Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I think everybody knows me. I'm Wayne Motz. I'm the President and Chief Executive Officer here at the Gettysburg Foundation. Welcome on behalf of the Foundation and co-sponsored by the Gettysburg National Military Park, our Sacred Trust programming for July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. Not 1863, but 2023, 160 years ago to the day. And it's going to be my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, a friend of mine for many, many, many years, more than 3 decades. I've been a friend with Pat Brennan, and this is a really great, what I think is a unique topic on the colorization of Gettysburg photographs. He has 2 volumes of books on this, a 3rd which will be coming out. He can tell you more about it. The 2 that are out will be inside behind me in the visitor center for you to purchase after he's finished. So let me just talk a little bit about what he's going to present, and then I'll tell you a little bit about Pat. The colorizing of historic photographs has entered a revolutionary new era. Modern technologies now provide an almost unlimited set of tools to digitally manipulate black and white photographs by removing scratches, curing anomalies, and colorizing the images. It may appear to be a brave new world, but distinctly modern approach shares the same spirit that's attracted pilgrims to Gettysburg for 160 years. Now, how about our speaker, Pat Brennan? A nationally known music producer and a lifelong student of the Civil War, Pat has authored 5 books on the subject. A member of the editorial board of Civil War Monitor, Pat's work has also appeared in North and South Magazine, Blue and the Gray Magazine, the Chicago Tribune, and the Chicago Reader. And like I said, the works that he's going to talk about right now, volumes 1 and 2, Gettysburg in Color, inside the visitor center behind us, and he will be signing when we're finished. Help me welcome Mr. Pat Brennan.
And I'm going to start it in typical Chicago fashion and say, how about a hand for Wayne Motz, ladies and gentlemen? The first time I met Wayne was in the bar at the Farnsworth House, and we talked for about 10, 15 minutes, and then all of a sudden he pulled a lit pipe out of his pocket and puffed on it, put it back in, and kept talking. And we were discussing the location of the 28th Massachusetts Monument, by the way. Thank you very much for inviting me here. It's a real honor to be here. Pleasure. 160 years ago, right about now, if we were all here and I was talking, you probably couldn't hear me because the cannonading would have been going on. And come to think of it, I'd probably be in Baltimore. I wouldn't be here at that point. In 1979, I had what Frank Sinatra would call a very good year. I was 26, going on 27. I was in a car by myself, 600 miles east of Chicago, and I was deciding to fulfill a number of things that I wanted to do. For about 18 years, from the time I was 8 years old, I'd been obsessed with the Civil War, and Gettysburg in particular, and I wanted to visit Gettysburg. So this was the first time I came here. It was in June. It was rainy. It was dark, and I was in heaven. But the battlefield was much different than it is now. If we were all to get up and walk out and look north, pointing above the trees would be the battlefield tower. And of course, it became a point of contention that the tower shouldn't be there because it obstructed. It was in every view on the battlefield that you could see. But I laid down my $2.50 and rode the elevator up. And I remember, too, that the elevator had music playing. It was Battle Hymn of the Republic or Dixie or something like that. But I think it was the first time I was in an elevator where there was music playing, and for some reason that stuck in my head. And that's a view of the angle that I took from the battlefield tower. And we could see some other ways that the battlefield changed, too. You see the cyclorama building over here on the right, and you see that little loop there. You could actually drive a car up right to the angle. And I actually did that and then sat down on the wall and got into kind of a reverie and started thinking about General Armistead charging over the wall right past the front bumper of my car. So it was weird that they let people drive their cars up to there, and of course they've gotten rid of that, and that's changed now too. Another odd thing about this picture is 1979, like I said. There's only one car in this whole picture, and this is about 10, 11 o'clock in the morning on a Monday morning. So I guess the traffic was there just wasn't much traffic at the National Park at that point. This is the view from the Virginia Monument, looking straight out across the field of Longstreet's charge. And what do you see over there on the left is that intrusive Seattle Space Needle sticking up. And believe me, anywhere you went on the battlefield, you could see that thing. And at first, a National Park guy told me, well, that will kind of locate where Meade's headquarters were for you, as though when you were down at the Rose Farm, you needed to know where Lee's headquarters were. So that was kind of it was obtrusive, and they did finally knock it down. Wayne, what year did they knock it down? The tower? 2000. And I think you can go on YouTube and actually see it get knocked down, too. It's kind of cool. From that point, now I'm a musician, as Wayne said. And part of what I did was go around the country performing with different bands, but also what I did was start a music production company where I scored television shows, documentaries, I wrote jingles, and I actually scored over 300 television shows in the course of my career. But one of the things, well, as I said, I went around the country performing too, and one of the bands I was in got really popular in Charleston, South Carolina in 1990, right after Hurricane Hugo. And I went out and found the battlefield of Secessionville, and I'd only found a couple of articles about it. So what I thought, I'm going to write an article about this. I think I could be an author. I think I could be in Civil War Times Illustrated or America's Civil War or something like that. And so I started researching it, and within a couple of months, I started getting so much information that I thought, this could be a book, but I've never written a book. I've never thought about writing a book. So I ended up writing a book, and it was called Secessionville Assault on Charleston. It came out in 1996. Savitz Beatty, the publisher in California, put it out. And it helped raise the consciousness of that battlefield, and now you can go to Charleston, you can go out on your way to Folly Island, on James Island, and there's a 30-acre battlefield park that wasn't there when I first started researching it. It was a very exciting moment for me, that falling face forward into this book and ended up helping to save that battlefield. Ted Savitz, after the book came out, said, well, now what are you going to do now? Are you going to write another book? And I thought, I don't know, it took 6 years for me to write this. Am I going to spend another 6 years writing another book? And I thought, well, Ted, if I get a good idea, I'll let you know. So in 20 years, I didn't have a good idea. However, in 2016, in the media and in advertising, we have a thing called the elevator pitch. And what that is that if you have an idea to do something or to pitch a concept, a show or a documentary, you have the amount of time that it takes to get into an elevator with someone and for them to go to another floor and then leave. That's what you got, probably about 30 seconds. Now, I've been involved in a lot of elevator pitches. As a matter of fact, I had one that I thought was a really, really good idea. I like to burn it down to 3 words. I think having 3 words is the best way you can pitch something. And we probably have some Pennsylvanians here. Do we have any Pennsylvanians here? Okay. This one of your native sons was the concept that I had, and it was called Ditka the musical. Right? Yeah, 3 words, you know exactly what it is. It's a musical about Mike Ditka, right? You could, okay, I know what it is. So I called up Ted Savas in 2016. I said, listen, Ted, I've got an idea. He goes, okay, give it to me. I said, Gettysburg in color. And 24 hours later, I signed a contract with them to put out the books. And here they are. Brandy Station, Little Round Top, Volume 1 came out in January, and Volume 2, The Wheatfield of Falling Waters, came out just a month ago. Oh, I just got bit by a bee. No, I'm okay. Ow. Okay, I'm going to... No, I don't know. I'm okay. No, I'm going to continue on. Go to the next one. Well, that's going to make my trip to Gettysburg memorable, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm sure it's going to be memorable for you too. And what I did with Gettysburg in color, there's a lot of talk about me having used AI, artificial intelligence, to figure out what the colors were in the pictures. But there was a lot more that went into than that. I do license an AI program called De-Oldify. Make what's old, somehow make it not old anymore. And I use that generally to run the picture through this particular filter. However, a lot more went into that. The AI program gets you, I would say, 50 to 60% of where you want it to get. And then after that, what I would do is work on the uniforms, work on the skin tone, work a little bit on the background too. The green, Gettysburg has a particular green. Oak Ridge has a different green than Seminary Ridge. It's subtle, but that's the kind of research that I had to do, or that I felt necessary to do. I didn't want to just leave it at something, and I wanted to do the same sort of research you do when you're writing a book. You want to get the facts right, and these are the facts. So weirdly, I did a deep dive online about what a cadaver would look like that was out in the outside for 72 hours. And that's kind of what the skin would look like. Now, what's interesting about this particular photo, and we've got 2 guys here, John Kammerer and John Peterson, who were with me on this particular journey. And if you read about it in Civil War Monitor, you'll know what I'm talking about. I ran this photo. It was one of the last photos I ran for the book, for Volume 2, because nobody knew where it was taken, and I didn't know where to put it in the book. And I ran it through the AI, and it came up with somewhat similar blues for the uniforms and hints of red on the uniforms. But it also said that that body back there was definitely butternut. Now, for 158 years, we've been saying that this is a photo of Union dead. But by running it through the AI, I guessed that there were 3 Confederate bodies in this particular photo. Now, I had cropped this because I cropped a lot of the photos just to make them look better on a page and give the emphasis where I thought the emphasis should be. But I went back to the original photo, ran that through the AI, and found that those bodies were all in butternut. Now, there's a second shot of this. That's the camera, they took this. Well, actually, they actually started with the second shot looking northwest. And the bodies in the background of that, too, were also butternut. So I went to the Elliott burial map and found a spot on the map where there was 5 Union troops, Union bodies buried, 3 Confederates over there and 14 over here that are in the background of the other photo. So I'm not going to say that we think we found exactly where this photo is, because it's history, and tomorrow everything might change. But we feel that this is based on what we came up just with that, and with a lot of other stuff too, that this is on the western slope of Seminary Ridge, about 200 feet south of Lee's headquarters. Very near where that epic picture of the 3 Confederates standing in front of the rail breastworks and looking out and seeing the giant poplar in the background. Now, you'll notice on the book that Dylan Brennan is also one of the authors of the book, and that's my daughter, Dylan. And what she did was work on all the flesh tones on the portraits. Now, if you've got the book, you'll see that we have a lot of portraits in this. I went all the generals down to the brigade commanders, except for a few. And she came up with techniques on doing just the skin color. And we used Larry Tagg's great book, The Generals of Gettysburg, that has descriptions of these generals. And where we couldn't find there, we did more research and found, they had brown hair, blue eyes, whatever. So we were able to do that. This is why Dylan's name is on the cover, because she did an extraordinary job of capturing skin colors. And she also used an AI program too, but she used it in a little bit of a different way. But so you see that we use the AI on landscape, and we use the AI on the portraits, but we did a lot more touching up on the portraits. I did the uniform, which was the easy part of something like this. We also made a decision that we wanted the portraits to look out at you. I thought it was important that you look into the eyes of these people. And now this is John Reynolds. John Reynolds, you see these photos of him, and he's always looking off to his right, and he looks kind of stiff and formal. He, a lot of guys, they just didn't know how to take a picture, how to look good taking a picture. But this is a shot of him at Fredericksburg in probably early '63, and he's just in the background. It's a photo of Burnside's staff, and he happened to be visiting at that point. But looking at him here, as opposed to the stiff portraits, I think you recognize why people thought that this man was a badass. He's got a steely look and a no-nonsense look, and to me, staring at you, it captures him much more than the kind of stiff portraits. This, of course, is a lithograph. It was a black and white lithograph. This is another technique that we used. I hand-painted this with 2 different digital painting programs. I did research into what color the uniforms were, what color the gloves were, what color his accoutrement was, the leather and everything on the horses. I also love this photo because evidently the guy that shot Reynolds was about 30 feet in front of the battle line all by himself. And nobody in the Iron Brigade evidently noticed that he had come by it. But that's typical of the artwork at that time. I think this is from the 1880s or 1890s. You notice, too, there's a gun and a rebel hat down in the corner. That's another indication of that it was a rebel bullet that hit him. But this is basically me taking the picture and adding paint to it. But it's adding paint by doing a lot of research with it. And this is another technique that we use too. This is one of the famous Rothermel paintings that the Pennsylvania State Historic Museum has. And this is Reynolds being taken off the battlefield. That's Herbst Woods up there. The Iron Brigade has come through Herbst Woods. More troops are arriving to attack north of the Chambersburg Pike. You see the buildings for the McPherson farm up there. And of course, here is John Reynolds' staff taking him away. What's really interesting about this, and I've had this discussion with a lot of people, McPherson Ridge, if you go to McPherson Ridge now, or if you go to Seminary Ridge and look out at McPherson Ridge, it's flat. It's the only ridge in the world that is dead flat. Well, of course, what happened was the Army Corps came in when the Army took over, and the Army committed to improving the roadways in the battlefield. And one of the things they did was grade the ridge. But if we got a hold of, well, anyone can get it, it's in the Library of Congress. It's the Warren topographic map. And that map shows that there's 3 hills that make up McPherson Ridge at that time. There's one just north of the Fairfield Road, a second one, and then a third one that started just south of Herbst Woods and continued up over the Chambersburg Pike. This is the only image we have of McPherson Ridge before it was graded. And you get this sense that there's a hill going up and continuing to go up, and it went up until past the railroad cut, when it finally went down and disappeared into the plain south or north of the cut. Whoops. Now in volume 3, it's going to be after the battle up until 1938. And so I included these 2 things. The Gettysburg Battlefield Memorial Association went around the battlefield and marked different points. Now, where Reynolds had been killed was a really, really popular point. He was a local guy, he was from Lancaster, and people wanted to come and see where he had been killed. So they constructed these kind of signs, and you see them at Devil's Den, you see them at the wheat field, where it would say the wheat field or the Devil's Den. But here is the place where General Reynolds was killed July 1st, 1863, and it's on a tree. Now there's another photo of this sign, and it's on another tree. And then you have the monument that the state of Pennsylvania built to him in 1886, which is really kind of nowhere near the trees. It's out right in front of the, just to the east of Herbst Woods. But volume 3 is going to have a lot of stuff like this, the way the battlefield changed, and especially the way people viewed the battlefield. Now combining all these techniques is what I wanted to do to tell the story of the battle. And so what I'm going to show you here is using all these techniques and telling a part of the battle. Of course, this is the beginning of Hayes's and Avery's attack on East Cemetery Hill. We're here. This photo was taken just a few years after the battle. And we're on Stevens Knoll, looking north. You can see the town. You can see some of the churches. You can see the courthouse. And the attack came out straight across that horizon and swung this way to hit the Union line, which you could just barely see in the woods on the left. But this gives you a beautiful idea of what the ground looked like, where it has changed a lot since then. As a matter of fact, you don't get this view anymore. You can actually see in the trees the line of the road that the 11th Corps was along. This is another technique that we used when we decided to do maps for the book. We took Google Earth and we got rid of all the modern encumbrances. And this was my son Kevin actually did this. He's another computer whiz too. And we used this old arrow that's from an old compass to indicate the directions. And I also, in a tribute to William Frascinito, we built these little cameras with numbers on them. So in the book, when you see this, it will say number 8, and then you could go and, if you want to go on the battlefield and go stand on 8 and see this exact thing. It's a total tribute to Frastinito, ladies and gentlemen. I did not come up with that idea. This was a lithograph, a black and white lithograph that shows the action on Stevens Knoll that day or that evening. I also did a treatment to the sky to make it look more like clouds. There's a lot of, it was getting dark, and there was a lot of artillery being fired. And you can, if you look up close, you could actually see the Confederate troops are out there, and the Union line is right along there. But it's a really dynamic shot. I love that shot. And that was one of the first shots I did. This was a series of paintings, 14 paintings that an artist named Briscoe did. And this is, you're out in the battlefield now with the Louisiana Tigers. That's Stevens Knoll, and Culp's Hill is over there, and this is East Cemetery Hill up here with the artillery, the Union artillery at the top. Now, I was talking to Scott Hartwig about this photo, and of course he said that, well, that's kind of what the Louisiana Tigers uniforms look like, but they had liberated a lot of civilian clothing in the course of them sweeping through Pennsylvania. And at the time of this battle, they were probably the best dressed regiment. So there wasn't much I could do other than to use what the Louisiana Tigers' original uniforms looked like. And Briscoe did the same thing, by the way. You could tell by his painting that he was going with the dark pants and the light shirts. This was a watercolor, and this demanded a different approach to colorizing. He had actually created the smoke coming out of the guns, but he did a very kind of impressionistic thing. So you couldn't really do a lot of detail, but you could do more broad strokes, and it really captures that kind of insane energy that was probably going on here. That's Weidrich's battery. You can see the cannoneers are swinging their staffs, and you can see the officers shooting their pistols. Some of the troops that have retreated up are using their rifles. And then, of course, Edwin Forbes did a series of paintings, watercolors. And this, of course, is the gatehouse. The fighting's going on at Weidrich's battery, but here comes Carroll's brigade, and over here you could see elements of the 11th Corps and 1st Corps coming to knock the Confederates back. Of course, there's Samuel Carroll, a fine Irishman. They called him Red, and this is an example of, obviously, of the portraiture that we did. Dylan did a wonderful job on his skin. I found an example of that kepi in a museum. So the colors of that kepi are about as close as you could get. And then this is the final moments of the battle as the troops come down from the gatehouse and across and drive the Confederates back down from the hill. This is a bas-relief that's on the monument on East Cemetery Hill. And this guy right here, John Kammerer, took this photo, and then I hand-painted the photo. It really looks weird, doesn't it? It's got like this 3D thing going on. And I used that, a lot of the bas-reliefs on the different monuments we used and did this process to it. And it was a resource that we were able to use. Now, volume 3, we have some of Stevens' cannoneers on the monument on Stevens Knoll. And on the left is John Chase, who claimed, probably accurately, to be the most wounded Union soldier of the Civil War. He was manning one of the guns on Stevens Knoll when a shell went off next to him. It took out his right arm, took out his right eye, and left 48 shards of metal in his body. And they removed a lot of it, but not all of it. He would come to Gettysburg reunions, and he had little cards that he would sign. He had a pamphlet that described what he went through at the battle, and then he had a doctor's picture of where all his wounds were. And at first I thought, well, you know, that seems a little gaudy, or I don't know, you know, I'm not going to make fun of someone who got wounded like that. But then I realized he's wearing the Medal of Honor, or he's not wearing the Medal of Honor in this particular photo. He won the Medal of Honor at Chancellorsville, defending the same gun against Confederates. So I realized anything he wanted to do, I had nothing to say about. I mean, the guy, he was an absolute monster during the Civil War, and he deserved to do anything he wanted to do afterwards. You can see East Cemetery Hill in the background. That's that kind of Dutch-looking tower that they built. It was the first attempt to build an observation post. And the reason it was there was because the Gettysburg Battlefield Memorial Association owned that land, and so that's why they built that there. This is the old gate that controlled traffic going north into the park that the Gettysburg Battlefield Memorial Association owned. That's East Cemetery Hill up there, and to the right was the ground where Avery's brigade tried to come to grips with the 11th Corps. Now, I just included this because it's a photo of musicians at Gettysburg. The Sons of Veterans Fife and Drum Corps from Phoenixville, which is just north of Pennsylvania, north of Philadelphia. And this is another part of the volume 3 that I'm doing, which shows different organizations, different people, baseball players, presidents, Native Americans, African Americans, all coming to Gettysburg and getting their pictures taken. And so this was just typical of that. I'm not exactly sure where on the battlefield this was taken, but it is identified as they spent a weekend on the battlefield and probably performed a number of times. There was a great classical pianist named Vladimir Horowitz, who was one of the for 70 years he was one of the greatest piano players in classical piano players in the world. And at 90 years old, 90 years plus, he was asked, "Maestro, why are you still practicing so much?" Horowitz famously practiced 4 hours a day when he was 92 years old. And Horowitz said, "Well, it's because I think I'm finally getting it." Now, I know we're all here, we are afflicted. We are all, as they say, dogged victims of inexorable fate. For some reason, we love Gettysburg, and we love coming here. Here we are in the 160th. It's an amazing feeling to be here. I was standing in my home library once, and someone said to me, "Why do you have so many books?" Okay, I admitted it was my wife. And it's a long time ago, because I have to say that my wife's father was an artist, and she has his eye, and every single picture you saw here and every single picture you see in the book, she critiqued, and it made the book 95% better for her critique. But back then, she was wondering about this. As a matter of fact, the first vacation we took, we were at the Doubleday Inn. So she knew early on. One of the things I learned about Volume 3 is why people came here. At first, they built the battlefield to be like a cemetery. that you would come and you would reflect. There was no sense that, oh, we've got to protect the battlefield and make it look the way it looked at the time of the battle. There was none of that at all. As a matter of fact, they were like planting plants and ferns and bushes, and they wanted it so that you could just walk around. It was a concept they called genteel travel. And that's what the battlefield looked like, especially under the GBMA's stewardship. But then people started coming for different reasons. There were farmers coming to pick up the metal that was around, or the blankets. You know, blankets were worth a lot at that point. And then tourists started coming. They heard there was this battle here, and they came and they wanted to see what a battlefield looked like. After the turn of the century, car clubs started coming here and getting their pictures taken at Devil's Den or at the Pennsylvania Monument. I've got these great photos of these like 1914 cars lined up, and you know all the drivers have goggles on and scarves, and it's really, really cool looking stuff. And then I read that the car people liked to come here because when the Army took over, they committed to improving the roads around the battlefield. And now they had started expanding the battlefield, so it was much larger than it was when the GBMA had it. And these were the best roads in America because the Army said, we're going to build great roads. So these car owners would come here, and then at night they'd go out on the battlefield and they'd race, which is just fantastic in my mind, at least. They had to hire police to police the battlefield at night to stop this sort of thing from happening. But what also happened was that the railroad connected to here. Harrisburg finally connected a railroad to Gettysburg. And people started coming just to have fun, just to come to Round Top Park and hang out. And they built a trolley system that went around, which was a democratizing concept, because when people used to come here, they'd have to hire a hack or a cab or a horse and carriage, and that would cost way too much money. But for like a quarter, you could ride that trolley around the whole battlefield and do it all day and get off wherever you wanted to go and get on wherever you wanted to go. And more and more people started coming. And then when the automobiles got really popular, you just had this huge amount of people coming here because this became a destination. And here we are today doing the same thing that people have been doing for 160 years. Literally a week after the battle, farmers started coming here to pick up the metal and the blankets. It is something that we all share, not only with the people from the past, but with each other here. We're all part of this cadre that can't get enough of Gettysburg. And like I told my wife, you know, when I looked at those books, the reason I have all these Gettysburg books and all these Civil War books, and yes, I'm reading them at all, is because finally, I think I get it. But I'm never going to be sure about that. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to me for this. I really appreciate being here. I appreciate you all being here.
All right, Pat, thank you very much. Now, everyone, we're going to get Pat inside to sign books. We're looking at the weather right now because we're looking at what may happen at 3 o'clock. So stay tuned for whether or not the 3 o'clock program is inside. We will let you know. There will be somebody out here to tell you and let you know if no one is sitting in this tent, all right? So we're reviewing that right now based on the weather. So we've got one more program left, 3 p.m. If it's not in this tent, it's going to be back in the Ford Room in the museum. We'll let you all know about that. Sarah Hadley Cousins is going to talk about disability in the Civil War. It should be interesting. It'll be our last daytime program today. Okay? All right. Go get a copy of Gettysburg Volume 1 and 2, Gettysburg in Color.